The restaurant industry is getting better, I think, at adopting back of house technology. In our report, we had 51% of folks that, implemented an automated payrolling system. 51% have had implemented inventory management software. For staff scheduling, it was something like 49% adoption. So there is more adoption happening, but I think this is one of those things that's sort of becoming table stakes. I do think there's a lot of potential to unlock.
Hi, my name is Brett Linkletter, CEO and co-founder of Dineline, a restaurant growth agency. We help restaurant brands of all sizes grow and scale to new heights, whether that means opening new stores or increasing revenue at existing locations. We have a done-for-you model where we take care of all of the work for our clients on the marketing front, and we also have a unique software solution called Dishio, which allows owners to showcase their restaurant in the best light possible online, while also turning guest interactions into data to increase profits. Right now, you're listening to our podcast, Restaurant Misfits, where we'll discuss all things related to restaurant marketing, management, and everything else in between growing a restaurant business. Scaling a restaurant today takes much more than having grit and hustle. In this age, it's about utilizing the newest technology, educating yourself on new platforms and trends, and having a deep understanding of how this industry is changing. This podcast is dedicated to keeping you up to speed with the latest and the greatest through interviewing the biggest and the best in the restaurant industry. As always, we appreciate you for being here, and we hope you enjoy the show. Jordan, how are you?
Doing well, Brett. How are you?
Nice. I'm doing good. I can't complain. Here in Miami, weather is like basically perfect today. Only a few clouds in the sky, so yeah, not complaining. Jordan, you're tuning in from Saskatchewan, Canada, right? I believe.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. City of Saskatoon in Saskatchewan.
Amazing. Amazing. This is so random, honestly, just especially to start the podcast, but it's a long story. I'll keep it real short. My great grandfather is actually from Saskatchewan. And
No way.
yeah, and it's crazy, man. He was adopted by a minister with one leg. He was left at a church doorstep as a baby in Saskatchewan, adopted by a family, and then ended up crossing the border to come to the U.S., had a TV show, and then years later, I'm here. So I'm actually from where you're from.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
That's
crazy.
crazy. Do you know what town or city or?
Moose Jaw.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
That's crazy. That's like 45 minutes from my hometown. Crazy.
yeah, it's the weirdest thing in the world, but it's the story. We'll have a chat about it another time, or I'll come up to visit you. But
Wow.
super interesting, man. So anyway, I'm very excited to chat with you. You are the CEO of Seven Shifts, and it's interesting. I have quite a few clients using your guys' tech, by the way.
Oh,
Um,
amazing.
all pretty good reviews, so good stuff on your guys' side. I have a lot of questions I want to ask you today, but I know you started from your dad was a restaurateur. You grew up kind of learning the business a little bit through him, and then you had this idea. Tell me when you had the idea, like what sparked the idea? What was missing that you wanted to solve in the initial phases of starting this business?
Yeah, really, it was just trying to solve it for my dad who was running those Quiznos locations. And I just saw him painfully try and manage staff and schedules. And I was like, well, I can build something really small and rudimentary. I was sort of getting into web development at the time. So I thought
Hmm.
I could build something really small that I could help him. And really, I built a website where staff could all log in using the same username and password and not very secure. And I'll download that Excel schedule that my dad would upload. So it was very, it just started with very sort of meat and potatoes, obvious problem that I was interested in solving and building for.
Got it. Was this something also that like he was aware of and stressing out about and telling you about, or is something that you just noticed from an outsider looking in?
More so just noticed as an outsider looking in, there was there were always the indicators were sort of sticky notes all over his desk about staff availability when people could or couldn't work.
Hmm.
There was a mix of him calling people because someone called out last minute or said, "Hey, I forgot to tell you," or "Hey, you didn't see my note." And he was stressed out trying to find people. And then there was also a bunch of employees calling into the store saying, "Hey, is the new schedule out yet? Hey, I want to know when I work." So
Wow.
it was sort of this mix of living in a bit of like a tiny tornado of inefficiencies. and
But was
thinking,
he just, you said you know this as an outsider, was he kind of just accepting that this was like the norm of the industry? Did you kind of feel that
yeah,
way? Yeah.
yeah, very, very much. And when they trained him, and when you go through a lot of this type of training, it's less focused on like at the time, especially less focused on staffing and scheduling and optimal productivity for labor and ratios. Like there's none of that. It's sort of like,
Hmm.
oh yeah, at peak times, here's how many people I have on. So it was um it was a lot of flying by the seat of his pants. And he, much like a lot of what happens in this industry, especially as it relates to things like hiring, I think there's a lot of this feeling like, oh, it's just the industry. Like I can't do anything. People come, people that go. Um, and we could probably dig into that later, but there are a number of things that can be changed. And I think that operators are just so bogged down with
Yeah.
the millions of paper cuts that they experience on a daily basis. And
Yeah.
it's sort of like, what fire should I put out today? And if it's not a massive fire, then like I'm not going to tackle it. And so I think scheduling initially was sort of like, oh, well, this is just how everyone does it. But now with a lot of different technology, a lot of folks adopting different pieces of technology and integrating it and talking to each other, I think there's more exposure to what is possible. And it's still slower, I feel, than other industries in terms of getting that adoption,
Yep.
but it is changing for the better, I believe.
It's super interesting. And I, by the way, I totally agree. When I first started out in our business, we did a lot of e-commerce in the early days. And then we shifted to restaurants. I think you also were, I know you started with your dad's restaurant, but were you also doing other industries, by the way, before you centered it on restaurants? Or was it always restaurants for you?
So while it started with my dad who ran restaurants, we really allowed any industry to sign up for 7 shifts. It didn't matter what industry you were. We had retail companies, we had dog grooming companies, we had medical
Okay.
and construction companies. But there was a point in our early days that myself and my other co-founders said, like, I'm tired of being this jack of all, master of none. And there are some real problems facing the industry, the restaurant industry specifically. And there's not a good solution out there that exists, um, that we had seen. So we thought, by focusing on this industry, by establishing really great partnerships with initially point of sale companies, then payroll companies and food distributors, we were able to sort of create this vacuum of restaurant operators that were seeking out a restaurant specific tool.
Hmm.
And I think uh, I think to some degree, a lot of operators believe in some ways that a lot of the things that they're doing are highly unique. And some are, but there's a lot of stuff that's pretty much the same across a lot of different restaurants.
For
Um,
sure.
but I think starting with the fact that, oh, this product is built for restaurants, this feels like it's for me, and it integrates with other parts of my tooling that I have in place in my restaurant, was a good first step that
Yep.
and that resonated with a lot of our customer base. So while it meant isolating about 2/3 of our sort of horizontal customer base at the time, and it was kind of scary to shift focus on restaurants, the long-term impacts were very positive because of the things like the partnerships we established and all of those
Yep.
things that came after.
I could imagine, man. Well, that's awesome, and I feel the same in our business. I mean, we started, like I said, in e-commerce, then shifted to restaurants. We had to let go about 50% of our clientele, or probably 60% at the time, which was tough. But in the long term, it was great. And I think to your point, yeah, people are seeking out something specific to their industry, and the restaurant space is so different from others. Um, Circling back though, just what you said from the beginning, the first couple minutes of this is like a lot of restaurant owners just accept something crappy as like the norm.
Mhm.
I didn't personally feel that or see that in the e-commerce space. When something was wrong, maybe it was the type of founders we were working with, but when something was wrong, it would get fixed. They were hyper focused on new tech. You guys are obviously a tech company. Have you guys felt any just like resistance to some of this stuff, the stuff you're doing, and why do you think that is in our industry? Like why are restaurant owners so against some of this new tech, and why do they accept crap? It happens all the time. I literally see it still daily. It's crazy to me.
Um, so I definitely see it too. And I wish I had a good answer. I think that there's some degree of, again, like with a lot of restaurants, especially independents, I think there's this notion of there is something about the restaurant that often has this uniqueness to them. And look, I think a lot of independent restaurants do have that.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that probably permeates and in different ways into their thinking about technology and how I don't even want to look at this because it probably they don't understand my business. It's not going to make sense for me. I'm super unique and I do things very differently.
Yeah.
And and so maybe part of it is a bit of an ego aspect. Um, but I think that the more operators can just sort of figure out how to make a bit of time to poke their head out of the sand and say like what is out there to address some of my core concerns and also like what are other people in my vicinity in my restaurant community using
Yep.
and and I say this because restaurants are is a large industry but it's very highly localized. And oftentimes, a lot of these operators, especially that are serving the same type of food, maybe in the same area, like they know of each other. Um, or they don't. They don't serve the same, and they're different, and they're not competitive. Like there is an element of knowing who these folks are, and I think that understanding what some of the best operators and the busiest restaurants are doing in those key markets can be a really great way for other operators that are less sophisticated but want to become more sophisticated to actually raise the waters for themselves to get to that level and to understand what's out there and what's possible. So,
Yep.
um, yeah,
No, I hear you. I mean, I've seen you say this. I don't know if it's other podcasts or articles I've seen about you, but you said like there's never been a better time to start a restaurant than right now, thanks to tech. A lot of pessimists might say, oh, but there's still razor thin margins. With inflation, it's only getting worse. There's labor shortages. I read recently that the restaurant space has a 75% employee turnover each year, which is crazy. So, like, I guess, by the way, I wanted to say I agree with you. There's never been a better time to start a restaurant, but I want to hear your opinion about it because there's a lot of pessimists that say otherwise. What would you say to them?
I just think there's the reason I would say is it is a good time to think about that is and debatable right now in this very moment where there's like food cost inflation and all this other
Yeah.
stuff that's challenging right now but generally speaking I'm more so comparing to this like 10 years ago like maybe 15 years ago I think that there's so much information out there to understand how you can best think about opening a restaurant in your type of market how to best market yourself, what tools are available, where the opportunities are, like using tools like Chat GPT. There's so many things you can just ask that you're curious to know that could help guide you on a path that could mitigate some of the risks that come with running a restaurant because there's a ton of risk. And a lot of these operators don't make it past the first year. So
Yep.
I think that looking at doing some research, understanding what's out there, using tools like ChatGPT to sort of dig into certain areas and understand other factors that might come from actually like starting a restaurant is like we just didn't have that before.
For sure.
On top of that, a lot of the tools that are being adopted in tech, or at least some of the best tools, give
Yep.
you really great actionable insights to do the thing that you need to do to try and make the restaurant more successful. So whether it's drive more guests with different promotions at certain times,
Yep.
whether it's how to do more with less from a labor perspective.
I mean,
Um,
there's
th-
there's definitely a shift towards like hyper personalization. I've spoken to a lot of people about this, and I think that's like the next wave. Speaking of ChatGPT and AI and all this kind of stuff, you guys, I mean, you guys have at this point, I read 50,000 restaurants using your guys' platform, right?
Yep, that's right.
What do you? There's other softwares similar to you guys, obviously, other competitors out there. What do you think is what's the core problem that you guys solve for that maybe other software companies in your same niche competition, like what are they falling short of? What's the, I guess, what's your guys' main differentiator, would you say?
Yeah, and I think that to some degree, differentiators don't, you know, last. Um, Depending on how much money is flowing into companies to build things, like,
For sure.
features are sort of a dime a dozen when, multiple people are sort of flush with cash to build things. But I would say that for us, there are some things that I would say that are inherently unique that are maybe more difficult to replicate other than maybe feature Y versus feature X. I think that we have a big emphasis on our customer support side of things
Mm,
where people are getting timely and necessary help. Um, but then also the simplicity of the product. And the reason I say simplicity is it's a very emotional thing where you use something and you've probably used an app or many apps where you go like, wow, this is so easy. It's so simple. And
yeah,
if someone said, well, tell me why it's simple, you'd probably be like, I don't know, like look at it. It's so easy, right? It's like, how do you, and it's not a feature necessarily that is simple.
totally.
It's how the entire experience was implemented that makes you have that emotional feeling. And I, I believe that and continue to want to work on the fact that what we've built evokes that feeling. And while feature for feature, someone else can do scheduling, we really see ourselves as building that simple end-to-end HR platform. So from hiring, training, scheduling, paying, and retaining, that's our domain. That's where we focus the bulk of our energy and time.
Got
We're
it.
not building point of sale, we're not building inventory. Those are other companies that do that and do that well. But where we want to be the best is in those buckets and connecting that workflow. So there's a lot of companies that do just hiring. Maybe they do just scheduling. Maybe they do just payroll. But, you know, we're sort of the main players that kind of do those all in one cohesive system, where you don't have to bounce around to different places to
Makes
do
things
it.
easier.
And
Yeah.
on top of that, we go deep with a lot of different integrations to help make that experience really, really smooth. So, um,
What are some integrations that you do that maybe would be unexpected to your typical consumer? For example, like, I don't know, is there a marketing platform that you integrate into and you're trying to see if based upon training your staff in this way or that it has an impact on sales? Is there something interesting that you guys do that is, I guess, unexpected that most customers of yours don't expect when they sign up with you? What kind of interesting integrations do you guys have?
um, there is I mean, several like point of sale integrations that are restaurant specific, inventory integrations that are specific to our space. Um, but I think a lot of things that people don't realize is until you've used a product that sort of like allows you to build schedules, clock in for your shifts, pay out the tips or calculate the tips, then pay out the tips directly to the bank accounts, then run it all through payroll in one seamless experience. Like 99% of operators have not experienced that.
Yeah.
And that's a because there's different disjointed systems that do all of those things typically. And so that's one surprise, especially for folks that are new to using our payroll product. Um, the other side is we take a view on and a big emphasis on the employees and the importance of an engaged workforce in your restaurant. And I know Danny Meyer talks about, culture is, some of all the behaviors you celebrate minus the ones you tolerate. And I think it's a really very well articulated um, description.
Yep.
But then also goes on to say, we put our we don't put our customers first. We put our employees first because if we put our employees first, they'll put the customers first. And when we think about our product and how we want to and our advantage and how we can help operators is really helping them put their employees first with our
Yep.
Engage product and allowing them to keep a pulse on their people. And for
How so
instance,
exactly? Yeah, how so?
so if, for instance, if Brett was always showing up on time, working your shifts and picking up shifts for other people, posting your availability on time, communicating through the mobile apps with other team members, and all of a sudden, months later, you're not showing up for your shifts. You're giving up all your Friday shifts, which is weird because that's when you make the most money. You stop posting your availability on time, and your shift feedback, your qualitative scoring of how your shifts are going, you're constantly ranking it a thumbs down. We're going to look at the qualitative aspects and the quantitative aspects of the Engage score and say, hey, manager, Brett's actually becoming pretty disengaged. So you
Mm,
might want to have a chat with him. And
wow.
so that's something that's baked into the core of the Seven Shifts platform that I don't think many people realize. But when used appropriately, it's a very powerful tool. We had one multi-unit operator saying that they were using it, and um, all of a sudden the Engage scores all tanked at one of the locations, and they basically got rid of the manager. So it was a manager problem, and all the scores went back up. So that old saying of you quit your manager, not your job, is very true in this case, where a lot of folks were just disengaged because it was a poor manager that was running the establishment.
Wow.
So those are types of things where it makes it hard to diagnose and sort of like you slowly witness like a trickle bleed of people just leaving your restaurant. And you're like, what's going on? It's hard to know that it was a manager.
Wow, that's so interesting. One of my sales reps today spoke to a concept with three locations, each averaging anywhere between like 80 to like 120,000 a month. And the location on the lower side, I think it was actually like 65 or 70 on this third. He was telling me just about his after his call today, and he said there's one of these locations, and it seems like people are just unengaged, and I can't figure out why. And I could totally
Mm.
see this as one of those situations. I mean, it's so interesting. As you're talking through it, I would have asked now with this information, when did this start happening? What are your assumptions about why this started happening? And it probably, I mean, it could be a manager thing. It's no way to know. I never talked to the guy, but I could see so many restaurants with the same situation. I mean, that's so interesting. Who, I guess, for your guys, who's like who's a good ICP for you guys? What types of restaurants are you guys typically working with?
So the majority of who we work with, 85% of our customers are single unit independent operators. And the
Oh
other
wow.
15% are multi-units, probably like, I'd probably say 5 to 50
Yeah.
location operators. And we've been growing that segment over time.
Yeah.
But it's definitely, yeah, it's definitely an exciting market to serve, in that a lot of these independents like don't really have much and they're not really exposed to like they don't have a VP of operations or a VP of finance that's sort of helping them with some of the core issues of operating. Um, and so they're wearing many hats. The manager, they're the owner, they're the VP of ops, they're the VP of finance. So it's exciting to sort of empower them and give them some basic tooling to just do their job,
Yeah.
so that they can focus on serving their customers and doing other things that don't involve the headaches of managing people.
Yep. Yep. But I love what your product does, man. I mean that is so interesting, unique, and I've never actually heard that from anyone else. So that's really powerful. So I read that you developed essentially three strategies to reduce operating costs, but
Mhm.
without sacrificing service quality. Can you just break those down for us? I think our audience would really benefit from hearing from you on that. Like basically, what are the key pillars of that approach essentially?
So the first one would just be staffing appropriately.
Yeah.
I think when restaurants cut or reduce tables, they don't end up with fewer expenses. They just end up with burnt out, disgruntled staff members. Um, And when we did this labor report that we recently released called the Labor Playbook for Seven Shifts,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, the cost of turnover is astronomically high. So And I know there's a bunch of studies and different data points around this, but our front of house workers are at least $1,000 to replace them. Back of house is a couple thousand. Managers are 3,000. Like it just sort of goes up from there.
Yep.
Um, so making sure folks aren't burning out, making sure you can, they are engaged, because there is a real cost to actually replacing these people. You train them, you looked for them, you search them, you invested so much time into kind of getting them. So that's a big one. I think the second one is embracing technology. Um,
Yep.
I think that the restaurant industry is getting better, I think, at adopting back of house technology. In our report, we had 51% of folks that implemented an automated payrolling system. 51% have had implemented inventory management software. For staff scheduling, it was something like 49% adoption. So there is more adoption happening. Um, but I think this is one of those things that's sort of becoming table stakes. And the last one is, it kind of coincides with the first one, which is sort of investing in your staff experience. And there, I think in prior months and even last year, um, the biggest problem that operators were facing was hiring in some of our reports. And hiring has always been a challenge, and I think it will continue to be a tough one for operators. But right now, the, the food costs and inflation has been a really big top concern. And
Yep.
how people are then sort of saying, well, where am I going to save? If this is becoming out of control, how am I going to save money? And they're thinking about their staff, as one of the levers. Um, and they're thinking about not hiring as many people, but rather cross training their people more.
Mm.
So having someone that's cross trained on three positions that can actually sell is better than two or three people that are trained on one position that can't really sell. So I think that we're seeing more of an investment in people, and folks that are actually investing more in that staff experience. So I think we're going to continue to see more of that. But retention is something I think the best operators are prioritizing.
Yeah. Back to that first point you mentioned. So identifying the correct staff members. I talk to restaurant owners all the time about this because it's a huge issue. Again, turnover, finding the right people. Um, what kind of recommendations do you have for that as far as like how can a restaurant find the right person? I know for me personally, when we first started 10 years ago, I mean, I read a book called Who. I forget the name of the author, but it was super insightful and it taught us as a company basically how companies have these employee handbooks, which I think are so outdated these days. It's just ridiculous. Like someone starts and they hand them a book. Hey, this is everything about our business. We do what's called like an employee scorecard, where every single position you have basically like a one or two pager that explains the job role and how it fits into the company. That's been really good for us. When we look at hiring people, we use this scorecard and we populate it with key attributes we're looking for, and we try to match it, right?
Mhm.
We also try to find people that obviously have the experience in what we're doing. But on your guys' side, I mean, you're working with over again 50,000 restaurants. Any tips or tricks that you can share that would ensure a restaurant does hire the right person versus just following their gut, which is seems to be most of the time. Like,
Yeah, it's the gut is strong in some ways, but it's also flawed in others. And I think that, especially as you're trying to grow too, there's definitely ways to systemize some of this. I can share what we've been helping operators do and implement. Is something that we implemented at Seven Shifts when we were establishing and trying to hire really great people,
yep.
which was, first off, we were sort of said, well, let's think through like core values and how do we establish core values? And we started off with saying, well, if we could clone anyone here, who would we clone into infinity?
Ooh, I like
And
that.
we were sort of like, I think we were 10 people at the time, maybe 20. And it was unanimous. Like myself and our co-founders were like, oh my God, this person and this person, hands down. We said, okay, well, why would we clone them? What type of characteristics do these people have that makes us want to clone them?
Got it.
And we wrote down this whiteboard of all these characteristics and behaviors that these people had. And then we invited them into the room and we said, we're establishing our values as a company. And we think you all are an amazing fit at this company and exactly what we want. And we want more of you. Let's go through these and sort of like, you know, collapse, cross things out that are the same. And let's like kind of boil this down to what we called oxygen traits. And so now we sort of empowered these people because we brought them into our process. Um, and they helped us sort of refine and pick out these oxygen trait behaviors, we call them. So things we couldn't live without, and pulled it down to like five. And from there, we wrote them in a way that were less about they were behavior based. So instead of saying, hey, I wanted to clone this person because they're respectful, we sort of dug a layer deeper and said, well, what does it mean for them to be respectful? And let's make it a behavior that we can actually hire, fire, and promote by. And so that's how we got to our values that evolved over the years, but are currently be radically candid, embrace new challenges, act like an owner, make every experience an 11, and solve with simplicity. So once we
Wow.
did that, we introduced them to the entire company. We said, "Hey, here are the values that we went through this exercise." And the actual people that we wanted to clone were part of this like introduction. They were like, because we knew that as we introduced this to the company, people would go off and chat and disagree or agree or have questions, and we wanted those people that we already knew were respected people amongst their peer groups to like go to them and they could be like, guys, I was part of this. This makes a ton of sense. Like cool your jets, like this is awesome, right? And
Wow.
so it made it so much easier to kind of roll out. And then yeah, we typically screen for, to this day we still screen for those behaviors, and we try and suss that out through a series of questions. We do in some cases exercises and scenarios with people, try and suss that out. But ultimately that's sort of the rigor that goes into screening. And I think that that's a process that is not tech company specific. This is business agnostic. If you're a restaurant, if you're a farmer, like I don't know, like if you're running a business, you could implement something like this to try and help screen and promote and
I
hire
love
by
this.
some of these values.
Man, this is incredible. I love this. Man, I might even copy this in our business. This is great. I love it. This is
Right
better
on.
than what I told you. This is amazing, man. I love it. Do you guys educate your clients on this?
No, honestly, we don't. Um, and I think that we could. We should.
You guys should.
Um,
I'm loving this. This is awesome. Seriously.
yeah, it's a great call out. And I think that we like some of this may come out through like publications that we'll have that folks can read, but I think this sort of fits within our view and our narrative of we want to take whether it's some of these things that we've learned as a company, but also the best practices of other restaurant specific businesses and
Yep.
bring them into one centralized place so that people can learn and grow and sort of raise the waters for everyone.
Yep. This is really insightful. Seriously, that's probably, I'm not even exaggerating. That's probably one of the best strategies I've ever heard, specifically about finding the right people and a format that I think, again, like you said, any industry can follow. It's not restaurant specific or tech specific. Anyone can follow that. I'm feeling honestly like it's hilarious. We have an employee on our team. Her name's Hannah. She's amazing. She manages double the amount of revenue MRR for us than the second place account manager on our team. It's incredible. Like she's just an absolute badass. And our we had a management meeting 2 weeks ago, something similar to what you just described, but I wish I had this rubric to follow, honestly, because we said the same thing. We said, "Hey, how can we just clone Hannah? She's killing it. She's great at what
Yeah,
she does. We should probably bring her into the conversation because she probably knows things that we're not even considering." But this is great.
exactly.
It's super cool. I love it. Um, wow. I love that, man. That's really, really, really incredible. Um, Now, let's talk about scheduling mistakes. What's like a common scheduling mistake you guys see restaurants just making on a consistent basis? I can imagine it happens all the time. I mean, I hear all the time, oh, my staff isn't coming in, or this or that, or someone's double booked, or no one's booked. Why does this happen? And I guess, what do you guys see on your side?
Yeah, I would say um, a bunch of it has to do with just not even understanding the business as well as an operator could. So
Yep.
whether it's historical trends of sales, what you typically do the first week in June, um, like historical um, events that may have impacted that as well get layered in, or even
Yep.
any upcoming events, whether it's a concert, whether it's a sports game, like and you're by an arena, like those are some things that I think are easy solves, especially through technology.
Yep.
Um, but I think that if you were to take just kind of go back to the folks that are moving from, say, Excel and paper, which is about at least 60% of people still use that,
Yep.
which is crazy. But as it relates to them coming online for the first time, it's interesting because like we have so many tools to help them manage more efficiently and better and give them some insights. But um, they're and I say this is a mistake because it's just not maybe fully understanding the tools you have at your disposal and how to use them to the best of your ability. But they
Yep.
almost like do the same things when they come on, some of them, and they're just like, oh, I'm just gonna like duplicate my schedule here to here and like good to go. Um, but I think that once you're comfortable with that and you're comfortable with migrating to an online product, then it's worth exploring what are those other things that could be valuable to you. And so anyway, that's another kind of scheduling issue that we see comes up is just like it's just getting too comfortable with how you do things and
Yeah, I
not
totally agree.
getting out of like getting out of your own way, so to speak.
Yep. Well, I mean, we're in the marketing and we're in the marketing sector of restaurants, right? And it's crazy, man, that I would say over 80% of the time when we're speaking to a prospect for the first time about working with us, whether they're you can use our software tool Dishio or sign up to our agency, because we got two sides of the business. Um, More often than not, restaurant owners don't even know what cost per acquisition means or CAC.
Hmm.
They've never ever considered that because the only metrics they've ever utilized or looked at when it comes to marketing is, did I post something on Instagram and it got enough likes or not? Or like it's like we boosted a post and it had a pretty good reach. I was like, well, what do you mean a pretty good reach? What does that mean? Like it's
Yeah.
and I could imagine probably the same thing for you. I mean, I'm already thinking about tons of clients of mine that are still literally, like you said, using paper and pen. We have a client here in Miami. They're doing 35 million a year on one location. Awesome
Wow.
concept. It's insane. One of the top concepts in the world. They still do everything by paper and pen with an Excel sheet printed out each week, and they still pay all their people with handwritten checks. I mean, it's like, how the hell do you operate? It's their CFO told me he was on the podcast recently, and he said, "No, I literally every week I have to write checks, handwritten checks to everyone. It's and literally mail it out."
Yeah,
It
it's like what is your time worth is like a question I have like
yeah, it's
on a
crazy.
business that's doing that. Anyway, that's interesting.
It's
Um,
crazy. It's
Never heard
crazy
of
to
that.
me. Yeah, it's pretty odd. Um, it's very very strange. It's something that I seriously I don't get it. Let's talk about data because you've talked about data a little bit. We at our company love data. We say data equals dollars. You have the data, you have the answers. A lot of restaurant owners don't even know where to begin when it comes to data. What are I guess certain KPIs or aspects to your software that you encourage your clients to look at, embrace tech and understand in order to be successful? What are specific KPIs you might encourage someone to watch for? I know you mentioned
Yeah, I think
earlier. Engagement.
I think that there's yeah, the engage data is I think a really important one. Because if you don't have staff, then like you can't run a restaurant, and if you can't run a restaurant, you're like doesn't matter what data you look at. So you need to make sure, I think, first and foremost, that your staff are engaged in the work
Yep.
that they're doing. But I think there's some basic things out there around sales per labor hour and labor as a percentage of sales. But I really think, depending on the type of establishment, and maybe this is a little bit more specific to um, table service, but Jim Taylor from Benchmark 60 is a consulting firm in run out of Vancouver. Like he really emphasizes, covers per labor hour. And I think that that's a really great way to look at productivity because
Mm,
ultimately, prices fluctuate, check sizes fluctuate. And so like measuring your percentage of sales, or sorry, your labor cost against like sales, it's not the best indicator of how productive you're being. But
yep.
if you kind of map your, how many tables you're turning in an hour, and that against some of your sales, and I think that, or sorry, that against um, your labor hours that you have working, I think that, and he's said this many times, like that's a really great area to focus because it highlights the productivity challenges within your business, and it's something you can control. You can't control the check sizes, like that. Those may go up, those may go down, but like what you can control is you can make sure your staff doesn't burn out because they're trying to like run around like a chicken with their head cut off because you understaff them because there's way more tables than
For
staff to
sure.
handle these tables. And so I think that that's a really covers per labor hour is like a really interesting metric that I think is important. Um, but I think for as it relates to more quick service style, yeah, transactions per labor hour, probably like a similar type of
Yeah.
concept. And then trying to figure out how you can, best optimize against some of these metrics with how you staff and um, what types of folks you have on and at what times. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of tools out there that sort of try to get too granular with this stuff, where they're just like, hey, you need half a person for this 15-minute increment. There's folks that have done like the time and motion studies where they're like counting how many paces that staff take to go do a thing, and they're like sitting on site and measuring the paces someone takes to like throw something in the garbage can. And I'm like, that's just that seems like overkill to me. Like there
Yeah.
there's
Strange.
like it's sort of like implying that people are robots. Like we're not robots.
Yeah.
There's there's
Yeah.
there's things that come up, and anyway, so I think that there are a series of metrics are important. I think the engagement metric is a top one. I think sales per labor hour is really important to know, and I also think covers per labor hour is a really important one.
Yeah. Absolutely. So you mentioned ChatGPT earlier. Are you a pretty big AI fan? I imagine.
I'm a I'm a fan of what's been going on. Yeah, there's been some, I mean, it's been very helpful for me in my day-to-day work. And
Yes.
so I'm excited about the prospects of this. I think there is a lot of hype around it still, but I think with hype, with any amount of hype, it will subside, and we will get some sort of equal footing here, or um, um, some baseline of what we can actually do with this. But
Yep.
it is pretty exciting. We use AI for bringing schedules into 7 shifts, for especially for folks that are coming off of Excel and paper. We just say, take a picture of your schedule, and then we just put it all in for you, like
Oh,
people,
amazing.
shifts, everything. So
So you guys are doing that right
migrating
now.
to
That's in
seven
the
shifts, we
product.
do that today. We do it today in the product. We do it on the mobile app
Wow.
and on the web app. So when you come in, it's like we can discern uh the AI can importer can discern like people, it can tell you what are shifts, it can tell you what roles, and we've thrown a lot of different schedules at this thing, and we've honed it and made it work really well for
So
us.
the onboarding, I imagine, is much simpler than it was before without AI.
Oh
That's
yeah.
pretty awesome. Huge.
Oh,
Um, it's interesting. So like I mentioned, for us, we have a software side of the business, which is Dishio, and then our agency is called Dineline. Our software we only launched last year in January, so we're not even a year and a half old. Um, I can very much respect what you've built. It took us 2.5 years to build just the MVP.
Mhm.
Cost me pretty much our entire profits over the last 3 years. Self-funded the whole thing. Um, Now, as we were building our tech, AI was starting to really develop, and we've been playing kind of this game. It feels of trying to just keep up with all the new features coming out within AI and getting better. What's similar is likewise how you just said you can take a picture of the schedule, upload it to your guys' system. We do the same thing. We say, hey, if you don't have a point of sale integration or whatever it is, simply take a picture of your menu, upload a PDF, give us a web link to your menu, and likewise our AI can grab that, build a menu within our product as well. And I think for you, it's been very beneficial. For me, it's been very beneficial. What about for restaurant owners? Because I feel like it's one of those buzzwords now. There's a lot of hype around it where restaurants are like, "Hey, I like." Restaurant owners might say, "I like AI personally. Like, I can make some cool photos now, or whatever. I can do this or that to help me personally." But like, how are you seeing AI being used by restaurant owners in the restaurant space? Maybe right now, or potentially, if you're not seeing a lot of it, where do you see this going for them?
Yeah, I think that there's been, um, you know, we do some machine learning within as it relates to predicting schedules and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I think we're seeing a little bit, and this might be more specific to the enterprise space, but AI screening for candidates for hiring within the
Wow.
restaurant space. Um,
You guys do that?
we don't do that, but we've seen some other companies that are doing more of that. Um,
That's
there's
pretty
also
incredible.
Yeah, there's also folks that are doing, menu adjustments, real-time pricing stuff, a lot of menu engineering things using AI. For us, I think that there's a really interesting opportunity to sort of look at. I even think of the manager logbook within the seven shift system. It's a daily log where folks are writing things, managers are recording various categories, whether it's sales, customer complaints, repairs, and like summarizing some trends within that and understanding what are the things that are actionable within that. Is it like if I was a manager and were to look at sort of like the past year of manager logbook entries, what's actually gone on and what are the biggest problems that we still haven't fixed? It's like, oh wow, the fridge breaking down, it happens every 2 days. And the next one's, this complaints from these employees. And, there's so many insights to capture with the information that managers are loading into seven shifts that
Yeah.
while we haven't built any of this out, I do think there's a lot of potential to unlock.
Absolutely. Well, you know what's interesting when you mentioned screening for employees. So I mentioned in the beginning of our call, my before we do a podcast, my assistant works with potentially the guest team about, hey, what do you want to talk about or guests talk about, and we come up with essentially a list of interesting topics that we want to discuss that we think our audience would appreciate, right? I
Mhm.
also every interview just kind of on my own for fun. Have you used the ChatGPT deep research function?
I don't
Are you
think so.
familiar?
No.
Yeah, so it's very interesting. Unlike your typical like O1 or 4.0 model within ChatGPT, there's something called deep research where you can have ChatGPT literally research someone or something and spend several minutes, 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes sometimes researching a person or a topic, and then giving you a report on that person or topic based upon how you instruct it. So I like asking deep research to do a just a short little analysis of the person I'm speaking to. And I asked in particular for hot take questions that I can ask this person. And what's crazy about it is ChatGPT will literally watch videos of you and show me them specific segments. So that's why I found some of your podcasts before this, by the way.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's crazy, and it does kind of a screening. It helps me understand who I'm speaking to, breaks it down for me, and I think it leads to better interviews because I feel like I already know you to some degree like, because of this, and it's all publicly available information. It just synthesizes it for you so you can make sense of it. And as you were mentioning, screening for employees, I mean that's deep research. I mean it's super interesting. It's very interesting, but you have to know how to prompt it, how to use the product. Obviously, even someone like yourself, you haven't used it. It's not very popular, I feel like, and it's interesting. Um, but yeah, it's very interesting to think about. So your product too, and I'm curious if you've ever gotten this. Maybe you haven't. Maybe we're not even close to there yet. But we've gotten a lot on our product. So our product, there's one component of it is it's a QR code menu in store. And what makes our product different from your typical QR code menu is, well, I like to think that our product looks very sleek and sexy. It looks kind of feels like a mobile app, even though it's not. It's a web app, right? You scan the QR code, you look at the menu from the guest experience, and it looks nice. You can filter it by all these different dietary restrictions or whatever. But what's unique about it is it captures data on the guest viewing the menu. We then use that data for remarketing. So someone comes in, maybe you get 3,000 customers a month. Now we have 3,000 data points we can use to retarget people online. Well, the pushback we've gotten from some concepts was, well, two things. Some people are like, oh, I don't like QR codes, like you could imagine, right? And then some people are like, well, your product has this like upsell feature. We want our waiters doing that. We don't want this all automated. We want our staff doing that. I said, great. Your staff should be doing that. They should be upselling. They should be trying to increase your average ticket and be trained on that. But oftentimes we find they're not. Have you gotten any pushback in your product? You guys automate a lot. Do you guys see that, I don't know, in the foreseeable future that there's potentially an opportunity to automate even more than you guys are currently doing, potentially come to a state in a world where the manager who's doing a lot of this, they'd be capable of doing a lot less, capable of maybe your product taking care of a lot of the management as it relates to stuff that can be done online. Um, do you guys see that? Is that
Mhm.
already happening? Do people push back? Because I could imagine someone's job, let's just say, was organizing schedules. Now they use 7 shifts and they don't have to do these things like they used to, right? Are you guys seeing that already, or is this something that you see coming, removing potentially some jobs, potentially?
I think that I think we're further away from that. I think that we provide insights to help the managers manage better,
Yep.
but there's still for us to sort of like for us to automate a lot of their work around scheduling is not quite it's just not there yet. And I don't know if it'll ever get there in some ways. And maybe I'm wrong in assuming that, but even when we implemented some of our machine learning to help folks to automate some of the scheduling process for them, for folks that wanted to use it, we hit all the right efficiency metrics that those operators cared about in our tool.
Yep.
But what we found was as soon as that owner kicked that schedule down to the managers would just change the schedule.
Interesting.
And they would change it because it didn't look like what they typically do. And so then we had another iteration of this auto scheduler where we said, we're going to actually learn about the changes they are making to it so that we can try and marry the goals and the efficiency that the operator sets up sort of like in the settings, like, hey, just hit a 20% labor goal. Because is that what all you care about? Yes. Okay, great. So you don't care about how the sausage is made? No. All right. So then we sort of automated the schedule. We would actually not only try and hit that target, but we would actually incorporate small nuances of how the managers would build their schedules. So that's the machine learning aspect.
Got it.
Because, and we found more success there because the schedules actually look like something they did versus something that was so wildly different for them.
Got it. Interesting.
Even then, people just change stuff. Um, even with our sales forecasting, 95% of the time when people change a sales forecast in 7 shifts, they make it worse.
Interesting.
And so w- w- it's an interesting human behavior thing.
Yeah.
And to some degree, you start locking that stuff, you can make it so they don't change that. And there are a series of steps that I think need to take place, and there's a lot of steps before you can say oh, I don't need a manager to build schedules. There's just a lot of things involved in that today, like the approvals and things like that. But
It's
look, I think
interesting.
maybe at some point in the in the future, there will be probably more things that are automated that allow managers to spend their time elsewhere.
Yeah.
There might be 20% of their work is automated through a labor management system, and they can spend that 20% just elsewhere. I
It's
don't know that
interesting
it
because
replaces it fully.
yeah,
Yeah.
because I no, because one thing that we do as a company is when calls we don't do anything outbound. Everything we do is we're hardcore advertisers.
Mhm.
We spend about 1.5 million a month, and I love advertising for many reasons, but one of which is that you can produce demand when you want, right? When, for example, our company when we produce calls and it's either an enterprise level restaurant that books a call or it's an independent owner. What I have our sales manager do is look at all the leads and then decide upon who's going to take the call out of our sales reps, right? We have someone on our team that's better suited for enterprise. We have some better suited for mid-level, single location owners, all of the above. And we've categorized them by, we have a scoring system for our leads, right? I would
Mhm.
imagine there's something to be said about a product like yours. It could be very possible where, hey, this weekend here in Miami, it's F1 weekend. It's a weekend that all restaurant owners love because they make a ton, right? It's like everyone's coming to Miami. Oh my God, whatever. I would imagine that, hey, restaurant owners want their very best staff on the floor, right? They really want the best server that's the best at upselling, that produces the highest tickets or whatever. I could imagine a world where probably right now they're doing this themselves, but I would imagine something like, software like yours, that could be a very, very promising opportunity to automate, right?
Oh
Um,
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Um, and I think that there's aspects of that even within our scheduling tool today, where it's certain folks that work certain shifts typically or have different levels of seniority. So, yeah, 100% agree.
yeah, huge. Okay, shifting a little bit back to your guys' business because I'm just super curious because I've been looking at, well, we've been trying to build SaaS for the last like 6 years. I'll be totally honest. I've failed miserable times. I've tried building online ordering platforms. I had a couple apps while I was in college. I've done lots of different things. Dishio is my first, I'd say, success story so far. We're still early on. You've raised over $100 million. Love that, man. It's incredible. Congrats, by the way. What's been the hardest part about your journey? What's been the hardest part about doing that? What are some challenges that you came across, and how did you solve for them?
Mm, there's been so many.
I can only
Um,
imagine. Like,
I think one of the big challenges out of the gate was, and it may have been a feature, not a bug necessarily, but we we decided to raise money in the Bay Area, but like then move the company back home to Canada in the middle of Canada.
mm,
Um, and I think that recruiting, I would say like recruiting was really great in that um, we sort of had like the ability to sort of be a big fish in a small pond because we
yep,
raised some money and people started to hear about us, and we could hire in sort of our local community and backyard where there wasn't a ton of tech companies and to compete with. But on the flip side is as we got to scale, it's sort of like, okay, well, you want to bring in some expertise, and where's that expertise? Well, it's not here. Um, there are other folks situated in different larger cities that we needed to go to and get. So I would say that was a challenge for us. I
is
think
are you guys all based in your area? Are you guys
no,
part remote as well?
yeah, we're sort of mixed. There's about 70 of us in Saskatoon, probably
Yep.
100 in Toronto, and maybe 100 more remote. So we do have some hubs, I'll call them. But I would say um I think a good tough lesson is just like I think the cultural aspects of building a company are so important, and we really emphasize it early days. I would say um I think trusting, yeah, sort of trusting your instincts at times too, and um, really ensure that you're not losing touch with sort of the ground level and the ICs as you kind of build your company and trying to figure out a way to sort of keep in tune with things without it being unscalable. I
Yep.
think that that's a really important aspect. Um, and like I still talk to a series of folks at different levels in the company, and just to get different perspectives and hear different things. Um, but yeah, I think raising money was really hard being here, but I wouldn't change it. Like I think that it also created a unique opportunity for us and for so many in the community here to be a part of something and to be part of a story that they never otherwise would have been part of.
For sure.
And that was the biggest driving force for me is how can I give others a great experience where they can grow and learn at a quick pace that they wouldn't have otherwise been able to do.
For sure. For sure. What else? And you said there's been a ton. What comes to mind as number two
Um,
for you?
um, I think some learnings around um, um, I think getting for me at least, like getting a coach earlier would have been helpful.
Mm,
And like we have boards, we have advisors, but I think having someone that was for me earlier would have been really great. And I think that that's something that I regret not doing, and um, something I'm making up for now. But just it is lonely at the top. Like that saying is like it's very true, and you want to do the best job, and you want to be the best version of yourself so that you can be the best leader for your company. And
yep.
there's people to help you do that.
How did you, and you said obviously there's people to help you do that, but how else did you become that person? For example, too, I can totally relate, and I personally have done some very interesting things that we've probably spent a little over 300,000 on coaches and consultants and whatever throughout the years. My partner and I, business partner, and it's been very helpful. We were probably opposite. We probably did too much coaching in the beginning. It was almost like analysis paralysis. Holy shit! Like there's all these things we're doing right. Um, I've even done some crazy stuff as like, man, we did like my partner and I each did hypnotherapy for like 6 months where we were literally hypnotized once a week in order to just unlock certain parts about ourselves in order to elevate. For example, you said it's very lonely at the top, right? I totally get that as well. I also very much had something called, you probably could relate to some degree, imposter syndrome. We started making some money
Mhm.
and you're like, holy wait, like this is kind of crazy. Or oh shit, we have 50 employees now. We have 60 employees now. What? Oh wow. Uh hmm. What is it? This feels kind of weird. Almost like you don't deserve it. What did you do to get past those barriers?
Um, I I probably felt imposter syndrome. I don't know that I there were definitely times where I felt imposter syndrome, but there were more moments of like certain inflection points where it's like I can't believe that we're about to hire someone that has a family. And
Yeah,
if this doesn't work out, then that family doesn't have an income because we had to let everyone go. So
super
that
tough.
that is probably a form of imposter syndrome, thinking that way.
Oh,
Um,
100%.
and but yeah, getting through it, I think, yeah, definitely talking to a coach has been helpful. I do think that's a big part of it. I think getting away from pulling yourself out of it, taking a little breather every now and then is helpful. Um, but yeah, I just thrived off building things for customers, and I thrive off talking to investors and pitching investors. So I never felt like super, super uncomfortable doing that.
Yep.
Because the more I did a lot of it early on, and I've had good meetings, I've had really bad meetings, but I don't know. To me, I always enjoyed that part of it. Like it felt like it made me stronger, and um, it helped me rally and get to the next stage. Like it was just, yeah.
Yeah.
Part of hitting a roadblock for me is more about like how do I overcome the roadblock than it is to
Yeah.
dwell on the block.
It was a
So,
challenge that you embraced, essentially.
yep, which is one of our core values, which
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
funny
I love
enough.
that. Yeah,
But
you have to be kind of addicted to the stressful situation to some level, right? You have to
yeah, you have to thrive on like a bit of the like uncertainty and sort of like even organized chaos to some degree of it.
absolutely. Absolutely. So, and if you don't mind me asking, what do you guys value at today?
I don't think I could say that, can I?
I'm not sure. You would know
Um,
better than me.
it,
Yeah.
it like our valuation from a fundraise.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't share it publicly because I honestly don't even know what we'd be valued at today. Like,
Yeah.
to be honest, I think this is one of those. Everything's changed. Like we last raised money in 2022, right?
Yeah.
When things were crazy. Um, and so I think
Absolutely.
like, and so like I'll say that like, my goal is to like continue to grow into our valuation of that time
Absolutely.
because things have just changed so much in the world.
Yes. And so that's what I'm gonna ask you next, and we'll wrap up here. You guys have done so much, been in business for years and years. Love everything you guys have done. And again, before this call, I spoke to a few clients that are using you guys, which has been really cool. What's your roadmap look like for the rest of the year and into 2026? What's the future of Seven Shifts look like?
Yeah, we're going to continue to evaluate products across the employee life cycle, so hiring, training, scheduling, paying, and retaining. I think for me, the most exciting is tackling those, and we're going deep in pay right now, and we're sort of the only product that I know of that does scheduling, time and attendance, tip calculations, tip payouts, direct to bank accounts, and then run it all through payroll in one cohesive app. And so basically unlocking more multi-units to do payroll with us, which is sort of um, some of that work will be done within the next few months here. And I'm very excited about that. And then also thinking about what other parts of the pillar we want to tackle. Like I think training is an interesting one to explore and seems to be a really big problem. And especially in a world now where operators are cross-training a lot of their staff to
Absolutely.
do more than one role. So a lot more in the employee life cycle.
Very cool. Any specific big bets you're making that, I don't know, atypical big bets you're making currently on yourself in the industry?
Yeah, I'm betting that things are gonna, continue to turn around and you know that restaurants are gonna rebound. I think they're very resilient. And we're in an environment right now where a lot of folks are very spend conscious, and I think that we're just bullish on restaurants in general. Like unless like we have two fundamental truths, right? Like people need to eat, which
Yep.
is we need to survive, and people are social. So as long as those things are true, restaurants will exist. And I think that we see the long-term opportunity as just being able to serve these restaurants and yeah, just we're bullish on it. We're bullish on restaurants.
Absolutely. And any thoughts about the restaurant of the future? What does that look like in your mind?
The restaurant of the future. Oh man. Um, so that's a good question. I think the restaurant of the future to me sort of looks like this perfect blend of human connection with technology, um, especially when you're going out with friends and you're wanting to enjoy each other's company. I think a big part of going out is that social aspect and camaraderie. I don't want to lose that through robots and technology. I think the dining
Yeah,
experience is just so people centric. I do believe that there's a nice happy blend of that where operators are freed up to do other things. Maybe it's spend more time on the floor. Maybe it's to, maybe it's for the owner themselves to get to know the customers and the patrons more because
yeah,
they have a bunch of the back of house stuff automated in a better fashion. But to me, it's still a personalized. It feels like a personalized experience and one that very carefully merges technology and people.
absolutely. No, I totally agree. And then just last question for you, Jordan. If you, I know you're a busy guy, but if you had additional time, if you could clone yourself and you could work on a new project in the restaurant industry, what is something that you would see yourself doing? I mean, I guess, more so where are there opportunities for someone to build something in the restaurant sector? Or what's something that you would like to do yourself if only you had the time
Specifically in restaurants.
in the restaurant sector? Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would want to build up more of the I think more of the back office. Um, I think that that's a really, really fun area to play in. I also think coupled with that, I would say spend a bunch of time within trying to cover and test the opportunity around our long term, which is to build more of a sort of like hiring network within the industry. We're used by 1 in 10 restaurant workers in the US. How could we know who shows up for what shifts, who picks up shifts for others, what point of sale they're trained on, what certifications they have? How do we map workers with restaurant opportunities that make sense for their wage needs, their availability needs, maybe it's close to them? And how do we help operators find better people faster and surface people to them when they don't even realize when they're going to need someone? Like we could predict turnover before it happens. We can do that today, but we should be able to tell you these are 3 people you should talk to because so and so is becoming disengaged. And when we've seen this, they typically leave within a few months. Here are 4 or 5 people you can chat with. Click this button to do so. So I think seeing more of our vision around how we think about hiring and the opportunity within it is something I would really want to carve out a bunch of time to explore, and I will do that,
Yeah, I
but
love
just
that
not
idea.
right now.
Yeah. Yeah, you guys are already working on so much, man, and this has been really incredible. So obviously if someone's interested in your guys' product, you guys should go to sevenshifts.com. Check out the product, guys. I personally looked at it before the call, and what you guys have is truly incredible. And appreciate your time today, Jordan. If somebody wanted to learn more about your product or even yourself, where can they connect with you online?
Yeah, they can email me, Jordan@sevenshifts.com. They can connect with me on LinkedIn, Jordan Bush, Boesch. And yeah, if they're an operator, sevenshifts.com, sign up for a trial, and let me know what you think.
Awesome, man. Hey, appreciate your time again, and I'll let you know next time I'm in Canada. I got to come visit where my
Awesome.
family's from.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Appreciate
yeah.
your time, Jordan. And we'll
Thanks,
we'll
Brett.
chat very soon.
All right. Sounds good.
See ya.
See ya.